The battlefield was silent now, but the silence was heavy. The ground was burned and broken, pieces of metal and smoke rising into the dark sky. Among the ruins walked a single human, his clothes torn, his face covered with dust and blood. His name was Daniel, a soldier who had survived when many others had fallen. He moved slowly, scanning the wreckage for anything useful: water, food, weapons, anything that could keep him alive. The war between humans and the alien empire had been long and cruel, and Daniel knew this world was still crawling with enemies. As he pushed aside a broken piece of armor, he heard a sound. It was soft, almost like a cry. Daniel froze, his hand tightening around the old rifle slung over his shoulder. The sound came again, weak, trembling, like someone trying not to be heard. He followed the sound, stepping carefully over blackened stone and shattered machines. Behind a collapsed wall, he saw movement, a small figure curled up in chains. Her skin was pale blue, her hair dark and tangled, her eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. She looked weak, thin, and beaten. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. It was an alien girl. She lifted her head slowly and stared at him, fear in her shining eyes. For a moment they simply looked at each other, two survivors of a terrible war. Then Daniel lowered his rifle. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice rough from smoke and dust. "I won't hurt you." The girl blinked, confused by his words. She had been treated like an object, a thing to be owned, never spoken to with kindness. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Why do you help me?" Daniel did not answer with long speeches. He simply knelt beside her and broke the chains with a piece of sharp metal he carried. The chains fell to the ground with a heavy clink. The girl flinched as if expecting punishment, but instead Daniel reached out his hand. "Come on," he said. "We need to get away before they return." She hesitated, her body shaking, then slowly placed her small hand in his. Her touch was cold, but for the first time in years she felt the warmth of someone who cared. He helped her stand, supporting her when her legs almost gave out. Together they began to move through the ruins. Every step was dangerous. Every shadow could hide soldiers searching for survivors. But Daniel did not let go of her hand. He did not know who she was. He only knew she was alive, and she deserved freedom. As they walked, the girl kept looking at him. This human was different. He carried no whip, no collar, no cruel smile. Instead, he carried scars, pain, and yet a strange strength in his eyes. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand." Daniel turned his head. "What don't I understand?" Her eyes filled with tears as she said, "I am not just a slave. I am his slave." Daniel frowned, not knowing who she meant. She lowered her head, her voice shaking. "The Warlord. I belong to him." Her words hung in the air like a knife. Daniel's heart beat faster. He had heard of the Alien Warlord, a name spoken with fear across the stars. The Warlord was cruel, powerful, and merciless. And this girl, this broken, trembling girl, had been his most treasured possession. Daniel looked at her, his jaw tightening. He could see the terror in her face, the way her body shook at the thought of being taken back. But he also saw something else. Hope, fragile and faint, but alive. Daniel tightened his grip on her hand. "I don't care who you belong to," he said firmly. "You're free now." The girl gasped softly. As if those words were impossible to believe, she shook her head, whispering, "No one escapes him, no one." Her voice broke, tears running down her face. Daniel stopped and turned to face her fully, his eyes burning with determination. "Then I guess we'll be the first," he said, his tone steady. She looked at him in silence, her heart racing. For the first time, she wondered if freedom was more than a dream. Behind them, the night air carried faint sounds, the echo of ships, the cries of hunters. The Warlord's men were already searching. The girl trembled again, clutching Daniel's arm. Her voice was barely a whisper, filled with fear. "You don't know who I am." Daniel stared into the darkness ahead. "No," he admitted. "I don't." He glanced at her, his grip firm and unshaken. "But I know this, you're not going back to him." With those words, they stepped deeper into the night, the ruined world groaning under the weight of war. A human soldier and an alien slave, now bound together by fate, one running from her chains, the other refusing to let her fall. Neither of them knew yet that the galaxy itself would soon shake, because the warlord's most prized possession no longer belonged to him. The night was colder than Daniel expected. The burned world around him gave no warmth, only smoke and ashes rising into the dark sky. He kept moving, guiding the alien girl through broken ruins and shattered streets. Her steps were weak, her body trembling, but she did not let go of his hand. Every sound made her flinch, every shadow felt like danger. Daniel understood they were being hunted, far above. Small lights blinked across the clouds, alien drones. Scanning the battlefield, their engines made a low hum. Like predators searching for prey, Daniel pulled her into the cover of a half-destroyed bunker. "Stay low," he whispered, his voice rough but steady. The girl crouched beside him, her glowing eyes reflecting fear. "They will find us," she whispered back, her voice breaking. "They always find me." Daniel glanced at her, his jaw tight. "Then we keep moving before they close in," he replied. They waited as one of the drones passed overhead, its blue beam sweeping across the rubble. Daniel counted its rhythm. 3 seconds left, 2. 1. He pulled her forward, and they slipped into the shadows again. Her chains had been broken, but the marks were still on her wrists. Every step reminded her of years in captivity. Every breath reminded her of the warlord's voice. Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but fear kept her frozen inside. Daniel noticed her silence. He spoke without looking back. "You're free now, but you must want to live free too." His words cut through her fear like a blade. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She lifted her head slowly, watching his back as he guided her. He was just one human, scarred, tired, and alone. But he was standing against an empire without hesitation, and for reasons she could not understand. He made her believe escape was possible. The ruins stretched on for miles. Collapsed towers leaned like broken teeth against the sky. Fires burned low, and the smell of smoke mixed with blood filled the air. Daniel led her through tunnels beneath the ruins, paths carved by war and desperation. They moved quietly, every sound echoing too loud in the silence. Once, a patrol passed. Only a few meters away, armored soldiers with heavy weapons. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her body trembling so badly she thought they would hear her heartbeat. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. His calm presence was like a shield. The soldiers passed without noticing, their heavy steps fading into the night. Hours felt like days. The 2 survivors slipped deeper into the city's bones. Finally, they reached an old transport station, broken but still standing. Daniel guided her inside, setting her down on a cracked bench. "You need rest," he said. Kneeling in front of her, her glowing eyes stared at him in confusion. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. Daniel shrugged, his expression tired but firm. "Because no one cared for me when I needed it. I won't repeat that mistake." Her lips parted, but no words came. No one in her life had ever spoken with such honesty. For the first time, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen, but safety was an illusion. The sound of engines roared outside the station. The girl's eyes widened. "They are here," she whispered in terror. Daniel grabbed his rifle, his body tense. He peeked through the shattered window. 3 alien hunters stepped into the street, armored and armed, their glowing visors scanning the darkness. They were not soldiers, they were trackers, killers trained to retrieve escaped property, and they were looking for her. Daniel turned back, his voice low. "Listen to me. When I say run, you run." Her throat tightened. "But they will catch me. Not if I distract them," he said, his eyes hard. She shook her head quickly. "No, if they see me with you, they will kill you." Daniel gave a faint smile. "They'll have to try." The hunters entered the station. their footsteps echoing like thunder. The girl's heart raced. She wanted to scream, to vanish, to disappear. Daniel raised his rifle, his breath steady. The first hunter's visor caught a faint reflection of her glowing eyes in the dark. He raised his weapon. Too late, Daniel fired, the shot echoing through the ruins. The hunter fell, armor cracking against the stone. The other two spread out, their weapons blazing. Daniel pulled the girl down behind cover, bullets shattering. The bench, sparks flying. The fight had begun. The girl clutched her chest, shaking. "Why are you doing this?" She cried over the sound of gunfire. Daniel's voice was steady. "Because no one should live in chains." He returned fire, forcing one hunter back, but the other circled wide, his visor glowing as he spotted her. He raised his weapon. The girl froze, her body locked with fear. Daniel saw it, leaped in front of her, and fired point blank. The hunter crashed to the ground, sparks flying from his broken armor. Silence followed. The last hunter crawled backward, wounded, his visor cracked through the broken glass of his mask. His alien eyes burned with fury. "You don't know what you have taken," he hissed. Daniel stepped forward, rifle pointed, his voice cold. "Then tell your warlord, she's not his anymore." The hunter staggered away into the night, vanishing into the shadows. Daniel lowered his weapon, breathing hard. The girl stared at him, tears in her eyes, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. He will come himself." Daniel looked at her, his face grim but unshaken. "Then let him come," he said, and in the ruined station, with smoke and blood still in the air, the bond between them grew stronger. Not master and slave, not rescuer and rescued, but two souls running together into the unknown, one carrying hope, the other carrying fire. And in the shadows of that broken world, their story of defiance had only just begun. Asterisk. The fire from the battle still burned in the transport station. The smell of smoke and metal filled the air. Daniel sat against the cracked wall, his rifle across his lap, breathing heavy. Beside him, the alien girl sat quietly, her glowing eyes watching him in silence. Her body trembled from fear, but inside her heart, something new was stirring. This human was different from everyone she had ever known. She touched the broken chains still hanging from her wrists. Every clink of metal reminded her of years in captivity. But now the weight felt lighter, almost meaningless. She looked at Daniel, his face scarred, his hands dirty, his eyes sharp. With determination, she whispered, "Why do you fight for me?" Daniel turned his head, his voice low but steady. "Because you deserve more than chains." The words struck her deeper than any blade. No master, no soldier, no one had ever spoken to her that way. For a long time they sat in silence, outside. The night carried the sound of alien patrols searching. Every distant roar of an engine made her shiver. She had always believed escape was impossible, but this human treated the impossible as if it were only another battle to win. Slowly, her fear began to mix with curiosity. She turned toward him, her voice soft. "Do you not fear him, the warlord?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He stared into the dark ruins ahead. "I fear many things," he admitted, "but fear does not mean surrender." His words echoed in her mind. Fear had always meant obedience to her. Fear had always been survival. But this man twisted fear into something else, strength. The girl lowered her head, her voice trembling. "My name is Lyra," she whispered, as if speaking it might bring punishment. Daniel glanced at her, then gave a small nod. "Lyra," he repeated, as if claiming her name back from silence. It was the first time she had heard her name spoken with kindness in years. A warmth spread through her chest, something fragile but powerful. The bond between them began to grow. They rested only for a short time. Daniel knew the hunters would return with more. At dawn they left the station, moving deeper into the ruins. Lyra walked beside him, her steps still weak, but her spirit stronger than before. She no longer looked only at the ground. Sometimes she looked at Daniel, and sometimes she looked at the horizon, as if searching for a future she had never imagined. The Ruins opened into a shattered marketplace. Broken stalls lay scattered. Alien symbols burned into the stone. Daniel raised his hand. Signaling for silence, he crouched low, scanning the area. Lyra followed, imitating his movements. Though her heart raced, voices echoed ahead, harsh and cruel. Alien soldiers. 3 of them, standing near a ruined tower. Daniel motioned for Lyra to stay hidden, but Lyra grabbed his sleeve, whispering, "No. Let me help." Her voice was filled with fear, but also something else. Courage. Daniel studied her face. She was not a warrior, not trained for battle, but he saw the fire in her eyes, the fire that chains had failed to kill. He nodded slowly, then pointed to a pile of broken glass nearby. "Throw it far," he whispered. "Make them look away." Her hands shook, but she picked up a shard and tossed it into the shadows. The glass shattered loudly, echoing across the ruins. The soldiers turned at once, their weapons raised. Daniel struck from behind, silent and quick. His rifle cracking once, then twice. 2 soldiers fell. The third ran for cover. Lyra gasped, covering her mouth. The human had fought like lightning, clever and fierce. The last soldier fled into the ruins, carrying news of what he had seen. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. "That will bring more," he said, his voice steady. Lyra stared at him, her heart racing. "You saved me again," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "We saved each other." Her eyes widened at his words, for the first time. She realized he did not see her as a burden. He saw her as a partner. They moved on quickly, slipping through alleys and broken towers. But Lyra could not stop thinking of his words. All her life she had been told she was property, a possession. Nothing more, but this human had shattered those lies with simple actions, and with every step beside him, her fear turned more into trust. As the night returned, they found shelter in the hollow of a fallen ship. The stars above glowed through the cracked ceiling. Lyra sat near the faint fire Daniel had built. She stared at the stars, whispering, "I used to dream of them." Daniel looked at her, his voice calm. "Dreams are the first step to freedom." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "Do humans always speak this way?" Daniel gave a small smile. "Only when we have nothing else left." The silence of the night grew heavy. Then Lyra's voice broke it, trembling but firm. "If he finds us, the warlord will not just punish me, he will punish you." Daniel leaned closer, his eyes sharp with fire. "Then let him try," he said. His voice was steady, but Lyra could feel the storm behind it. She shivered, not from fear, but from something new, belief, as she lay down beside the fire, exhaustion pulling her into sleep. Her last thought was not of chains, not of punishment, not of the warlord. Her last thought was of Daniel's words, and for the first time in her life, she dreamed not as a slave, but as a free soul. The bond of strangers had become something greater, a spark that would soon set fire to the empire that claimed to own her. The morning air was heavy with smoke. Daniel and Lyra walked through the ruins. Careful and quiet, the city felt alive with danger, every sound echoing too loud. Lyra stayed close, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows. She felt it deep inside. They were being watched. Daniel noticed it too. The silence was wrong, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He stopped suddenly and raised his hand, signaling her to wait. His eyes narrowed as he studied the broken towers around them. Something moved above. Fast and silent, hunters. They were not common soldiers. Hunters were chosen by the warlord himself, trained to track, to capture, to kill. Their armor was darker, their eyes hidden behind glowing visors. They never spoke unless giving a death sentence. Lyra's heart sank as she whispered, "He sent them." "For me." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low but steady. "Then we'll make sure they fail." From the shadows, one hunter dropped to the ground, tall, armored, with weapons built into his arms. Another appeared on the rooftop, visor glowing red, aiming down at them. A third moved like a ghost between the ruins, circling to cut them off. Lyra froze, terror locking her in place. Her whole body screamed to run, but her legs would not move. Daniel stepped in front of her, his rifle ready. The hunter on the ground spoke, his voice cold and sharp. "You carry what does not belong to you. Human." Daniel's eyes burned. "She belongs to no one." "The pay?" Hunter tilted his head, the glow of his visor scanning Lyra. "Property must be returned to the warlord," he said. "You may die quickly if you step aside." Daniel's voice hardened. "Not a chance." The fight erupted in a storm of fire and steel. The rooftop hunter opened fire, blue energy bolts tearing through the stone. Daniel pulled Lyra behind cover, sparks flying all around. The ground hunter charged, heavy steps shaking the rubble. Daniel aimed and fired, his shot striking the hunter's chest. The armor sparked but did not break. Lyra gasped, her fear rising. "Again. These are not like the others," she whispered. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then we adapt." He rolled out of cover, firing again, this time at the rooftop hunter. The shot cracked his visor, forcing him back. The ghost-like hunter moved closer, silent as death. Lyra saw his shadow creeping near, her voice trembling. "Behind you!" Daniel spun, firing at the last second, the shot clipping the hunter's arm. But it was not enough. The ghost hunter lunged, slamming into him, knocking the rifle away. Daniel fell to the ground, struggling as the armored figure raised a blade. Lyra cried out, rushing forward without thinking. She grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and swung. The metal struck the hunter's helmet with a sharp crack. The blow did not kill him, but it gave Daniel the chance to shove him back. Daniel grabbed his knife and drove it deep into the joint of the armor. The hunter fell with a metallic groan. Daniel pulled Lyra close, his voice urgent. "Stay behind." "Me," she nodded, but her hands still shook from what she had done. The rooftop hunter leapt down, landing hard, his weapon glowing with deadly light. Daniel picked up his rifle again, breathing heavy but steady. The two circled each other in the ruins, predator against predator. Then the hunter's visor locked onto Lyra, and Daniel saw it, the truth in those glowing eyes. They were not here for him, they were here for her. In that moment, Daniel understood. This was no ordinary rescue. Lyra was not just another captive. She was the warlord's most prized possession, the one thing he valued above all else. The hunters were not chasing a runaway. They were protecting the warlord's pride. Lyra's voice cracked. "Daniel, you don't understand. He will never stop. He will burn worlds to take me back." Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened, his face hard as stone. "Then let him burn," he said coldly. "I won't let him take you." The ground hunter roared, charging again. Daniel waited, calm under the storm. At the last moment he dodged, sliding to the side and firing point-blank into the weak spot at the neck. The hunter collapsed, his armor sparking, his visor going dark. Only one remained, the rooftop hunter. Visor glowing with rage, he aimed his weapon, shouting, "You are a fool, human. Do you not know what you've stolen?" Daniel stood tall, rifle steady. "I didn't steal anything. I saved her." The hunter fired, the beam scorching past Daniel's shoulder. Daniel fired back, the shot shattering the hunter's visor. The alien staggered, his glowing eyes exposed, at last filled with fury. But before he could attack again, Daniel's final shot struck true. The hunter fell into the rubble. Silence following like a shadow. Lyra stared at him, her eyes wide with fear and awe. Her voice trembled. "You don't know what this means." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow, his voice steady but sharp. "Then tell me," he said. Lyra's lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. "I was his favorite," she whispered. "The warlord's most treasured slave." Daniel froze for a moment, the weight of her words sinking into him. The galaxy feared the warlord, and now Daniel had taken what he valued most. He stepped closer, placing his hand on her shoulder. "I don't care who you were," he said, his voice firm. "From now on, you're free." Lyra's heart raced, her fear and hope colliding inside her. She whispered, "Then you've declared war on him." Daniel looked into the shadows, his jaw set like iron. "Then so be it," he replied. And somewhere far away, across the stars, the warlord himself turned his gaze to the battlefield. His hunters had failed, his prize was stolen. And his wrath was only beginning, far across the stars. Inside a fortress built on fire and iron, the alien warlord sat upon his throne. The hall around him shook with silence, every soldier and servant afraid to breathe. At his feet lay the broken helmet of a hunter, its visor shattered, its glow dead. The warlord's claws tapped against the arm of his throne. Slow and heavy, his eyes burned like molten stone as he stared at the trophy of failure. His voice was a growl, deep and terrible. "A human," he whispered. "A single human dares steal from me." The chamber trembled as his rage spread like fire. He rose, towering over his generals, his armor gleaming with power. "Send fleets," he roared. "Burn the ground he walks upon." His generals bowed low, their voices shaking. "Yes, warlord," but inside their minds was fear, for they had seen him furious before. But never like this. This was not about victory. This was about pride, about possession. The girl was not just a slave, she was his most treasured secret, and now she was gone. Taken by a human, whispers began to spread through the empire. Across colonies and warships, soldiers spoke in low voices. They say a human stole from the warlord. They say he killed hunters with his bare hands. They say the girl is free. The warlord crushed such talk wherever it spread. But words were faster than fire. The story grew, traveling through the stars. A single human standing. Against an empire, back on the ruined world, Daniel and Lyra moved carefully. They had found shelter in the remains of an old tunnel system. Dark and damp, Lyra sat against the wall. Her eyes distant, her face pale with fear. She knew what was coming. She had seen the warlord's wrath before. He did not simply punish, he destroyed, she whispered. "He will not send hunters now, he will send armies." Daniel checked his rifle, his movements calm but his mind racing. "Then we prepare," he said simply. Lyra shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "You don't understand. He will come himself." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice steady. "Then let him come." For Lyra, the words were both comfort and terror. She had spent her life believing the warlord was unbreakable, but Daniel spoke as if the warlord was only another enemy, and yet, deep inside, she wondered, could it be true? Could a human stand against the most feared being in the galaxy? The Empire's fleets moved, black ships cutting through the stars like blades. Planets burned in their wake, warnings sent to all who might shelter the fugitives, the warlords. Voice thundered through the Empire's channels. "Bring them to me, or burn with them." Worlds obeyed in fear, hiding their eyes, closing their doors, but still, rumors grew stronger. Some whispered that this was the beginning of something greater, that maybe the Empire was not as untouchable as it seemed. And at the heart of it all, the name of a single human began to spread. Daniel inside the tunnels. Daniel lit a small fire. Lyra sat close, staring into the flames. Her voice was soft. "Do you know what he will do to you if he catches you?" Daniel looked at her calmly. "Probably kill me." She shook her head. "No worse, he will break you, piece by piece, until you beg him to end it." Daniel leaned closer, his eyes steady. "Then he will learn something. I don't beg." The firelight danced across his face, and Lyra felt her chest tighten. He was only a man, but there was something unshakable about him. Something the warlord himself might not understand. That night, Lyra dreamed again. She saw chains and fire, the warlord's shadow towering over her. But this time in the dream, Daniel stood between her and the shadow. He did not run, he did not fall, he simply stood. And for the first time, her nightmare did not end in silence. It ended in hope. Far away, the warlord stood upon the bridge of his flagship. His eyes scanned the endless stars. He raised his hand, claws glinting in the light. "Find him," he growled. "Find the human, find the girl, bring me their ashes." His voice echoed like thunder, shaking even the strongest soldiers. But deep inside, in a place he would never admit, a seed of fear grew, for he knew something he had not spoken aloud in all his years of conquest. In all his years of power, no one had dared take from him and live, until now, the warlords. Wrath spread across the galaxy like a storm. Planets trembled, soldiers sharpened their blades. Fleets prepared for war, and in the shadows of a ruined world, a human and an alien girl held onto a fragile spark of freedom. The Empire would come for them, the warlord would come for them, but Daniel had already decided he would not bow. He would not beg, he would fight. The tunnels were no longer safe. Daniel knew the warlord's armies would soon sweep across the ruins, searching every shadow, burning every hiding place. He stood in the darkness, staring at a broken map projector he had salvaged. The screen flickered, showing the outlines of the city. Every red mark was a patrol, every blue mark was a safe path. But the blue was shrinking. The warlord was closing his fist. Lyra sat nearby, her glowing eyes watching him in silence. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight pressing on his shoulders. Yet he never spoke of surrender, not once. "Why do you fight when you know you cannot win?" she asked quietly. Daniel did not look up, his hands working to reload his rifle. "Because winning is not the only thing that matters," he said. "Sometimes standing is enough." Those words struck her like a blade and a bomb at the same time. All her life, standing had been impossible. Chains had forced her to kneel, but this human treated defiance as a victory in itself. And for the first time, she began to believe that defiance could spread. Daniel moved through the ruins that night. Scavenging, he found broken explosives, stripped wires, shattered drones. Piece by piece, he rebuilt them into traps. He worked with quiet focus, his hands steady. Lyra watched in awe. "You make weapons out of scraps," she whispered. Daniel gave a faint smile. "That's what humans do. We survive with whatever we have." To Lyra, it felt like magic, not machines. He was shaping hope out of ruins. By dawn, the first patrol entered the city center. Dozens of soldiers in black armor, their banners marked with the warlord's symbol. They marched with precision, their voices cold. "Find the human, find the girl," their commander barked. Daniel waited in the shadows, his finger on a trigger. When the first line of soldiers reached the square, the ruins erupted. The trap exploded. Fire and stone ripping through the ranks. Soldiers fell, their armor cracked, their formation broken. Lyra covered her mouth in shock. Daniel stepped out of the smoke, his rifle flashing. One man against an army, yet unshaken. The Empire had numbers, ships, and endless power. But Daniel had something else, unpredictability. He vanished into tunnels, struck from the rooftops. Every shot, every trap forced the soldiers to doubt. Rumors spread among them. "He fights like 10 men. He knows the ruins better than us." Some even whispered, "Maybe the stories are true. Maybe humans are dangerous." From the high ground, Lyra watched, her heart racing. She wanted to run, to scream. But more than that, she wanted to believe. Every time Daniel struck, she felt her chains fall away a little more. Every time he stood tall, she felt herself rise with him. And for the first time, she whispered a prayer not for survival, but for victory. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. He could delay the soldiers, break patrols, set traps. But the warlord was coming, and when he arrived, no ambush would be enough. Still, Daniel kept working, moving faster. He filled tunnels with fire traps, turned wreckage into mines. He carved a battlefield from the ruins, a battlefield for one man's stand. That night, Lyra sat beside the small fire again. Her voice trembled. "He will kill you." Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. "Maybe." She shook her head, tears forming. "Then why fight?" Daniel leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Because if I fall, it won't be as a slave. It will be as a man who chose to stand." Lyra's breath caught, her chest aching. No one had ever spoken words so heavy and so free. In the distance, the sky burned red. The Warlord's flagship had entered orbit. Its shadow stretched across the ruins, blotting out the sun. Every soldier bowed. Every commander trembled. The Warlord had come himself. Lyra gripped Daniel's arm, her voice breaking. "He's here." Daniel's face hardened, his jaw like iron. "Then it's time," he said. The ruins fell into silence. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra stared at him, her voice barely a whisper. "You cannot face him." Daniel loaded his rifle, his eyes never leaving the burning sky. "Watch me," he said. The Warlord's wrath had reached the world. His armies surrounded the ruins, his ships blackened the stars. Yet in the heart of the broken city, one human stood ready. Scars on his face, fire in his eyes. He was only a man. But he carried something greater than armies. He carried the will to fight. And when the Warlord stepped onto the battlefield, Daniel would be waiting, not as prey, not as property, not as a slave, but as the stand of a human. The ground shook as the Warlord's flagship lowered into the ruins. The sky turned black under its shadow. Lightning crackled across its hull. Soldiers knelt in silence, their heads bowed low. And then he stepped down. The Alien Warlord himself, a giant figure clad in dark armor. His eyes glowing like fire, his voice shaking the air. "Bring me the human," he commanded. "Bring me what is mine." Daniel stood on the broken walls of the city, watching the monster below. His traps were ready, his rifle loaded, but his heart carried more than weapons. He carried defiance. Beside him, Lyra's hands trembled, her voice soft. "You cannot fight him. He is more than a soldier. He is death." Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. "Then I'll show him what humans do to death." The first wave of soldiers charged, their weapons flashing. The ruins erupted in fire as Daniel triggered his traps. Explosions tore through the ranks. Walls collapsed on armored bodies. The air filled with smoke and screams. Yet the Warlord kept walking, untouched, unstoppable. Every step he took made the ground tremble. Daniel fought like a storm, his rifle cracking, his blade flashing. Soldiers fell one after another. But still they came. Lyra watched in horror and awe, her heart racing. The human did not fight for survival anymore. He fought for her freedom, and for a moment, she believed he might actually stand against the impossible. The Warlord finally reached the battlefield. He raised his massive clawed hand, his voice echoing. "You think yourself strong, human, but you are nothing. You are dust beneath my boots." Daniel lifted his rifle, firing straight at the Warlord's chest. The shot struck, sparks flying, but the armor held. The Warlord laughed, a sound like thunder tearing through the ruins. "Is that all?" he mocked. Daniel dropped the rifle and drew his knife, his voice sharp. "Not even close." The clash shook the ruins. The Warlord swung his blade, heavy and wide. Daniel dodged, fast and sharp, striking at weak points in the armor. Every hit was small, but every cut mattered. He fought with speed, with cunning, not with brute strength. The Warlord grew angrier with each strike, his roars shaking the air. "You dare," he bellowed. "You, a human, dare defy me." Daniel spat blood, his eyes burning. "I don't just defy you, I end you." Lyra cried out as the Warlord's blade struck Daniel's side, cutting deep. Daniel fell to one knee, blood staining the ground. The Warlord raised his weapon for the final blow. Lyra screamed, "No!" Her voice filled with all the pain of her chains. Something inside her broke. Or perhaps something inside her was finally freed. She grabbed the fallen weapon, firing at the Warlord. The blast struck his visor, shattering it, exposing his burning eyes. He turned on her with fury. "You dare raise a hand against me?" But Daniel rose again, staggering, wounded but unbroken. He lunged forward with his last strength, driving his blade deep into the Warlord's exposed face. The roar that followed shook the world itself. The Warlord stumbled, his claws thrashing, his armor cracking, and then, for the first time in history, the Alien Warlord fell. The earth groaned beneath his body, his voice fading into silence. The battlefield froze. Soldiers staring in shock, their master, the one they had feared for centuries, was dead at the hands of a human. Lyra rushed to Daniel, her eyes filled with tears. He was pale, weak, bleeding, but his eyes still burned. "You're free now," he whispered, his voice faint but steady. Lyra held him, her tears falling. "No, we are free now." Around them, whispers spread. "The warlord is dead. A human killed him." The empire that had seemed unshakable began to tremble. Hope spread through the shadows like fire. If one man could stand, maybe others could too. Daniel closed his eyes, his breathing heavy. Lyra held him close, her voice soft. "Rest now, you gave me freedom, you gave me life." And in that moment, as the ruins grew silent, a new story was born, not of a slave, not of a warlord, not even of a soldier, but of a human who stood against the impossible and proved that freedom was worth any price. The galaxy would remember his name. The galaxy would remember his stand. The galaxy would remember that a human, against all odds, had defied an empire and won.